This week in Jamaica Now, he stabbed the baby 11 times. Chilling details revealed of how murderer Rashane Barnett killed his 5 relatives in Clarendon. The hunt is on, police searching for more suspects in disappearance of social media influencer Donna-Lee Donaldson. Road mayhem, at least 8 people killed in 3 major road crashes this week. And no regrets. Former Prime Minister Bruce Golding says he will not back away from his view that the US extradition request for Christopher Dudus was flawed. I'm Jovan Johnson and this is Jamaica Now. The death penalty which was being sought for the man guilty of the Clarendon massacre of a woman and her 4 children may no longer be on the table. That is despite Rashane Barnett, the 23-year-old, who pleaded guilty on Thursday, having inflicted a total of 95 knife wounds on his cousins, who were all found with their throats slashed at their home on June 21. The mother, who Barnett claimed had disrespected him in front of her customer, sparking the deadly attack, received the brunt of the injuries with 48 stab wounds. The reason behind the gruesome murder, which has rocked the nation, was disclosed Thursday when Mr. Barnett appeared in the Home Circuit Court and pleaded guilty to 5 counts of murder. In his caution statement, Mr. Barnett said he was serving 2 men at his cousin's shop when she grabbed the money and told him not to assist any more of her customers. He also claimed she splashed water in his face. According to him, since that incident, his cousin's attitude towards him changed, and her children also started distancing themselves from him. Mr. Barnett said at the time when he attacked Miss Wright, she was holding her children. After that, he said 2 of her children rushed to the dresser and started hurling things at him, and he advanced on them and stabbed them. According to Mr. Barnett, the eldest child, who was in her room, picked up a pair of scissors and he rushed at her and stabbed her after she fell. After the details were read out in court, Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions Jeremy Taylor said because Barnett pleaded guilty, he's assuming that with the automatic discount, the death penalty will be taken off the table. His boss, the DPP, Paula Llewellyn, served notice in June that the state wanted Mr. Barnett executed. Under the Criminal Justice Administration Act, an offender is entitled to a discount once he pleads guilty at the first relevant court date. But the court will hear whether the DPP will still be pursuing the death penalty when the matter is called up again on September 22. Now the funeral for the 31-year-old Kamisha Wright, 15-year-old Kimanda Smith, 11-year-old Sharalee Smith, 5-year-old Rafaela Smith and 23-month-old Kishawn Henry Jr. will take place on July 31. Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Opposition Leader Mark Golding are expected to attend. The police are hunting several more unnamed suspects in the disappearance of 24-year-old social media influencer Donna-Lee Donaldson. Law enforcement sources say CCTV footage shows that witness statements collected are not adding up with what has been found on camera. The update follows Wednesday's news that Police Constable Noel Maitland was arrested over the woman's disappearance. He's to be interviewed. Ms. Donaldson was reportedly last seen at Mr. Maitland's apartment at Chelsea Manor on July 11. She was reported missing on July 13. Meanwhile, the police say a woman cop with whom Mr. Maitland shares a child is not linked so far to Ms. Donaldson's disappearance. And Donna-Lee's mother, Sophia Lugg, has been hospitalized. Her brother Neil Lugg says he took her to the University Hospital of the West Indies on Wednesday night with a long-standing respiratory issue that has worsened. At least 8 persons were killed in 3 major motor vehicle crashes this week, raising even more concerns about road safety in Jamaica. Jamaicans woke up to news Sunday that more than 20 persons were hospitalized and 2 killed following a collision on the Landover Main Road in St. Anne involving a government-owned Toyota coaster bus and a public passenger vehicle. 38-year-old Kermit Grant of Mackenzie District in Aboukir and 56-year-old Elizabeth Palmer of Mount Pleasant, both from St. Anne, died. 2 other persons have since died. They've not been identified. It's alleged that the government bus was in the process of overtaking when the driver lost control and crashed into a Toyota Hiace bus, killing the driver and a passenger. On Wednesday, 2 women died and several other persons were injured after a passenger bus ran off the road and crashed into a gully in Seaford Town, Westmoreland. One of the deceased has been identified as Yasmin Carr, who lived in Dundee, Westmoreland. Later that day, 37-year-old taxi operator Kevin Muir of Erie Castle Road, Stony Hill in St. Andrew, and Mark Witter, who were on their way home from a funeral, were killed in a crash on Mandela Highway in St. Catherine. Senior Attorney at Law Patrick Bailey has been struck off the roll of attorneys eligible to practice in Jamaica for failure to hand over $17,640 to a client. The Disciplinary Committee of the General Legal Council, GLC, made the decision to disbar Mr. Bailey on Thursday following a hearing into a complaint against him. Simone Williams complained to the GLC that Mr. Bailey collected the money and held it on trust for her. When she requested the money, Mr. Bailey made several promises to hand it over, but that was not done. The disciplinary committee found Mr. Bailey guilty of professional misconduct and ordered him to make restitution to the complainant in the sum of $17,640 with interest at 3% until the payment is completed. The contract of a manager of the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, was not renewed and an accountant and procurement officer transferred in a shake-up following glaring anomalies in the operations of the state-owned company. A 2020 report revealed that 165 checks written to 154 contractors in the sum of $32 million for desilting works were lodged to 2 bank accounts belonging to an individual who was not contracted. Those details were revealed in a report from the Auditor General's Department that was tabled in the Parliament on Tuesday. But the NSWMA head, Audley Gordon, has disputed accounts in the report that persons were transferred or reassigned because of what the internal audit reports found.
So you're saying then that, to be clear, that the transfer of the accountant and the procurement officer had nothing at all to do with any anomaly or any, what you referred to earlier as any unsavory actions on the part of persons working with the NSWMA?
What I will say is that I know of no transfer or reassignment that was done that is solely as a result of anything that is in the public domain at this time.
Former Prime Minister Bruce Golding says his greatest regret in office was hiring a law firm to lobby the U.S. government over its extradition request for Christopher Dudus Coke. Mr. Golding, who served from 2007 to 2011, suggested that his government's defense of Mr. Coke was grounded in principle, arguing that had the request come for a middle to upper class Jamaican, public response would have been different. At least 69 civilians and 1 soldier died in a May 2010 insurgency as criminals traded bullets with the police and army in support of the since-convicted West Kingston drug kingpin and gunrunner whose reach spanned dozens of communities. The extradition request signaled a wind-up of Mr. Coke's more than 20-year reign in the capital city, but was also the death knell of Mr. Golding's political career as he was forced to resign from office later.
The position we took on that extradition was that the extradition was flawed because critical provisions in the Jamaican law and constitution were violated. And I said to America, correct that, do it the right way, and then we will respond appropriately. And they basically said, well, you know, however we get the information, we get it, and therefore this is the basis.
In 2012, Mr. Coke was handed a 23-year sentence in a U.S. federal prison for drug trafficking. And that's it for this edition of Jamaica Now, your weekly review of the big news stories. Send us your comments at onlinefeedback@gleanerjm.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Jamaica Gleaner and on Facebook at Gleaner Jamaica. Like this video on our YouTube page, turn on your notification and subscribe today. I'm Jovan Johnson, and before we go, more from former Prime Minister Bruce Golding on his views on 60 years of independence and Jamaica's development.
When we became independent in '62, you have been to funerals that after that, I mean. Well, in 1962, from you left the flats of Spanish Town, you were traveling on unpaved roads all the way to Ginger Ridge, which is on the border of Clarendon, where I was born. So we have made improvement. Infrastructure is certainly one significant area. Despite all the complaints about our health services, we have made improvement there. If you look at mortality, if you look at the impact that we have made on the world scene in terms of our music, if you look at our athletes, how they have performed, and the significant impact that they have made on the world. So there are several areas in which we have done well. But we have fallen down in significant areas, for example, in terms of economic growth. Since independence, our economy has grown by 135%. Since independence. 3/4 of that growth was achieved in the first 10 years. So we spent 50 years growing the other quarter. We've made a lot of missteps, we've made a lot of errors in terms of our economic development strategies and so on. If you look at security and crime, you wouldn't know because you weren't born then. But in 1962, the murder rate was less than 4 per 100,000. Today it is 56 per 100,000. In 1962, we had one of the lowest murder rates in the world. Today we have one of the highest in the world. And then there has been degradation in so many other areas in terms of our values, our behavior, our attitudes, our lack of civility, the ease with which we quarrel and confront, and the difficulty we seem to find in terms of finding some consensus and finding common cause. So it's a mixed bag. I hope that in celebrating our 60th year of independence that we will do some reflection to look to see what made us succeed where we did, what caused us to stumble where we stumbled, to see whether or not we can draw some do's and don'ts for going